Story 1. I called my daughter a racial slur because her daughter and mine were feuding. There is no coming back from that. I haven't spoken to her, and my daughter hasn't spoken to her daughter since. Story 2. I watched my ex torment me and my children for a decade through harassment, unnecessary court proceedings, withholding child support, and trying to have my home sold out from under me, putting my disabled children at risk of homelessness. Then, she started being friends with him on social media behind my back, liking all his posts and possibly sending him pictures of my children and our location. We have been friends since high school, which is roughly 30 years. I was always kind to her. I do not understand. Story 3. When I met my partner, now fiancé of 8 years, I found messages on my mother's iPad between her and my then best friend, discussing how to ruin my relationship. They both could not accept that I was actually happy for once in my life and that I was not available at their beck and call all the time. I did not cut off friends the moment I entered a relationship. I continued to hang out almost daily. I immediately broke off contact with that friend, and my mother still acts bewildered as to why our relationship is extremely strained and why I keep my distance. Story 4. One person forced her religion upon me after I asked her to stop discussing it. The other allowed her friend to bully me and laughed as it happened. Story 5. Betrayed my trust by collaborating with my abusive former partner and spreading false information about me. Story 6. She advised me not to seek mental health resources at work because she was concerned I might say something about her that could damage her reputation. Story 7. At a barbecue I was hosting, he tried to hit on my wife without my knowledge. His wife and 3 children were there, so it was behind her back as well. Disgusting behavior. Story 8. When I told my former best friend that I was raped, he proceeded to pretend to reenact the situation. Story 9. I invited my wife over for drinks while his wife was out of town and I was working at night. I attempted to play it off as a harmless gathering with friends. However, I firmly believed that friendship needed to be addressed immediately. Story 10. My high school boyfriend stole my little sister's iPod. I defended her for a while until I was at a party and friends told me that she was bragging about stealing it. I partied with her one more night, managed my liquor better, and went through her purse after she passed out. I found it and left, then took an Uber home. I never talked to her again and she never reached out, so she knows what happened. I don't care. Goodbye, Dana. Story 11. In 7th grade, one morning we walked to school together as usual, attended class and lunch together. However, at the end of the day, on our way out, she unexpectedly punched me in the face and removed me from her friends list. A few years later, she apologized and wanted to be friends again. I declined. Story 12. Well, firstly, they ignored me for a whole summer while I sent them texts saying, "I miss you." They replaced me in our trio and then spoke to me like a classmate, not a friend, as if nothing happened at all in the new school year. I am confused, hurt, and I miss them. I know it's not horrible, but it hurts. Story 13. One person slept with my boyfriend. I have known her since childhood, and she has held a grudge against me for ending our friendship. One person made me homeless as revenge for her husband looking at me, even though I had no interest in him while living with them. One person disclosed my medical history to others, then played the victim when I confronted her and turned people against me as retaliation. Story 14. I shared my interests with my friends, but they manipulated me and made me feel selfish. Story 15. In 6th grade, my friend said I couldn't be in the Pretty Rich Girls Club. It was frustrating, but she was my only friend, and I am autistic, so I had a difficult reaction. Even after that, we remained friends for years, despite the unkind things she often did. Story 16. She suddenly turned on me after a night of partying and threatened to beat me up. I ran. Luckily, I am fast when I need to be, and I never spoke with her again after 3 years of friendship. Story 17. I was bullied for many years through exclusion while others pretended to be nice, which made me think I was the problem. This led to significant self-esteem issues, especially since I expressed my feelings of being left out to the friend group and was essentially ignored despite their pleasant words. However, I am doing better now. Story 18. I crashed my bike, borrowed money but never returned it, and slept with an old girlfriend. The list goes on, but my circle of friends has decreased. Story 19. Cease being my friends overnight after a decade of what I thought were close friendships. I became an atheist. Story 20. He dropped me and disappeared. We were best friends for a decade and housemates for years. He was my best man and I was his. We were inseparable. Then one day he emailed me and said he didn't want to be friends anymore. I never saw or heard a word from him again. Felt like a hurtful move if you ask me. It's fine to let a friendship fade, but you don't abandon your best friend. I'm pretty sure it was because he joined a secret society. Such groups are often not to be trusted. Story 21. Someone took my personal item. I found it in their house and they said to me, "It fell in the bag." It was something I kept hidden, but obviously not well enough. This makes me wonder what they were doing in my room when I wasn't around. Story 22. They shared a secret with me in confidence and then used it against me during an argument. This betrayal made me question whether they were ever truly a friend. Story 23. My sister trashed my house by throwing a party while I was in the hospital, including having sex in my bed. She became furious at me for catching her because I got out of the hospital earlier than expected and returned home before she had a chance to clean up the evidence. Story 24. I slept with my ex a month after we broke up. She had been saying how a friend would never get involved with a friend's ex for weeks before this. That was the last day I spoke to her for years, and we were dorm mates. Story 25. I met a guy from a dating app and liked him, but she got jealous. I guess the guy liked her too, and they secretly dated and got married. I tried to reconcile the friendship, but trust was lost. I didn't even like the guy much, but she could have waited. Story 26. When I was 13, my best friend at the time pinned me to the ground and forcibly removed my bra. I made it very clear I was not okay with this. We were at another friend's house, and my other friends did nothing. They probably didn't know what to do. I slapped her in the face when she let me up. Then I went and hid in the bathroom for a while and thought about calling my mom, but I didn't want to disturb her. So I just went back out and pretended nothing was wrong. That was obviously the end of our friendship, although we remained friendly for the sake of our friend group until the end of school. Strangely, the thing that upsets me the most about the entire situation wasn't even that incident. When we were leaving school, it was a tradition to buy a nice notebook and get everyone to write a leaving message in it. We didn't have yearbooks or anything like that. We swapped books, and I wrote a nice message with some memories from when we were younger, for old time's sake. She also wrote a similar message but ended it with, "We had good times, until you slapped me in the face." Story 27. I told him I had a mental health condition. At that time, 20 years ago, it was less understood. He told me I was making it up and that I claimed to have a mental health disorder that no one had even heard of. Little did he know it was the reason my life was in shambles. I was terrified of everything, dropped out of high school at 15, and suffered from insomnia because I was afraid to fall asleep. It really hurt. I tried to be vulnerable and share something I had never told anyone, and then he used it against me, claiming I was making it up. He then blocked and deleted me, ending a friendship we had since childhood. It was painful. I basically told no one about my struggles for about 10 years afterwards. Story 28. This was towards the end of the friendship, but it still hurts. A mutual friend and former coworker passed away suddenly. Mark, the former friend, told our other friends and coworkers that I was too busy with my new job to attend the funeral, and that I was a terrible person. In fact, I had informed him, both in writing and verbally, that I could easily take the time away from work. He even acknowledged that, but it didn't matter. That was the last straw. I missed my friend's funeral and was unable to say goodbye. I was made to look bad. My eyes were finally opened. Mark, who claimed to be my best friend, was actually deceitful. All the little things over the years were adding up. The isolation from others, using me as an excuse or scapegoat, love bombing, theft, subtle jabs at my self-esteem, and spreading rumors discreetly. I still miss you, Mike. You were a good man. Let's go Capitals. Story 29. I used to have a roommate who was also one of my closest friends. We lived in a larger studio, but it was still an open space. One day, she brought her boyfriend to live with us, and I said nothing at first. However, night after night, their activities began to wake me up because they were being intimate near me. One day, I lost it and confronted her, which caused a huge fight. On the day I was moving out, she and her boyfriend took my cat, waiting for me to leave. When I called her, she told me that her boyfriend had taken the cat. I later called him to demand that he return my cat, but he claimed I was a depressed person and that the cat would be happier with them. After I made a scene, they eventually did bring the cat back. I will never forgive them. Story 30. I have health issues and often need to rest or take my medication if it becomes overwhelming. During a trip, my friend disregarded my issues because they were inconvenient. When I tried to explain that I needed a break to eat something and take my pills, she insisted that I only cared about myself. Then, she spread falsehoods and told others that I was bullying her. She had a great reputation, and since I had always been somewhat of a loner, everyone believed her. Story 31. My friend was losing her house. She assured me that the money she needed was on the way, but it wouldn't arrive in time to stop the foreclosure. My husband and I had savings, but we were relying on it due to health issues. She promised I would be able to replace the money in a few days. Unfortunately, I believed her. She never paid me back and stopped talking to me altogether. I didn't ask my husband for permission, which was a terrible mistake. We almost got divorced over it. Story 32. He forged checks using my name, draining my bank account. Took a week to lose over $5,000. It took years to recover it all through restitution payments. Story 33. I went through my Facebook page, added girls I knew since childhood, and started sending them inappropriate direct messages. Story 34. 1. Ghost me without any apparent reason. Tell me he thought I was really weird and that he was ashamed of me. I was bullied in high school. The bullies said they would only bully me from now on, but not my friend. Then my friend didn't want to be my friend anymore. My high school brother, who became popular in his university city and let me go as a friend a few years later. Story 35. She slept with my husband. Just one time, but I am not a huge fan of her. We saw her again at a funeral a few months ago, and my husband went over to have a chat with her because he felt bad for her. He told me I was overreacting and that it was years ago and it is unhealthy to hold a grudge for so long. We have since separated. Story 36. They told me that I meant nothing to them and were surprised when I started to avoid them. Story 37. When I went to Maryland for my new job at Bethesda Hospital, my friend Mary convinced my husband to move in with her, kicked her husband out of the bed, and had Greg take over Frank's side of the bed. Story 38. This happened over 20 years ago. I was having a sleepover at a friend's house one weekend when she held a lighter lit for a few minutes, then blew it out and pressed the metal against my arm. When I asked her why she did it, she said, "I wanted to see if it would hurt." Within seconds, I had a blister forming, and I have a scar on my arm to this day. Story 39. I have been relatively safe. The worst thing that ever happened was when I offered to buy a friend lunch, and she took advantage of me for $110 in groceries that she never reimbursed. I was making only $11 per hour at the time and was so baffled by her grabbing a shopping cart that I didn't know how to tell her no. That was in 2011, and I have grown a backbone since then. I forgot where I put it after so many years of abuse in retail prior. Story 40. Grudge hold for talking behind a friend's back about how he plays games a bit too much is not a big deal. He was temporarily removed from the friend group or called a waste of a human. Story 41. Second grade lured me to be punched and kicked. They also tried to dislocate me on a regular basis while claiming to be my best friend. Story 42. She reported my ex-boyfriend to the high school for misconduct. He was incredibly reckless and enjoyed collecting knives, bringing one to school to show off after hours. She implicated me in the situation, causing me to lose my chance at valedictorian status. I believe the reason she did it was out of pettiness from an argument we had. She was the president of the school newspaper while I was the editor, and she could not handle criticism about her poor decision to change the aspect ratio of every single photo published in the paper to fit her text template. It looked terrible, and every peer I spoke to agreed with me. Despite this, she doubled down on her design choice, and I ultimately decided to quit the newspaper as I didn't need the class. The teacher did try to persuade me to stay. Story 43. I grew up in a small town where someone was spreading rumors about me during my last years of high school. They said I was hanging out in the woods with the local drunks and worse. My father was abusive, and I endured several beatings because of these rumors. Once I left for college, I discovered that the rumors were spread by my best friend and her mother. We were like sisters, and I even helped them around their home because they couldn't afford it. I cut them off, and the whole family ended up turning against each other. My friend stole her boyfriend, and her mother was involved with him too. They got everything they deserved. Story 44. I became close friends with someone over the internet. After about a year, I gave her $5,000, knowing she probably wouldn't be able to pay it back, but I thought she might try. A few months later, I visited her state and stayed with her. We had a good time, but she ghosted me after my flight arrived home. I never heard from her again. She won't answer my calls or hangs up once she recognizes my voice. Story 45. He was trying to impress a girl. I knew her. She was a major gossip and a toxic person. He told her about the abortion I had. I don't even know how that came up in conversation. I am not ashamed of my choice, but who shares that kind of information with others? That was 15 years ago, and I have only spoken to him once since then, when he emailed me to say he was moving away. I told him good riddance. Story 46. A never-ending competition began in our group chat for hog hunting. 4 of the other guys would see who could take home the biggest one during deployments. This has been happening sporadically for about 15 years. Story 47. 1. Physically hurt me. Destroyed my reputation so people wouldn't believe she was actually bullying me. Threatened me multiple times with different people. Was only my friend to convert me to a religion 3 times. Tried to steal from me. Hit me, and when I pushed her away, she acted dramatically and managed to hurt herself while trying to be dramatic. This was at the last birthday party I ever had. She managed to spin it to make it look like I was in the wrong, and everyone believed her. She essentially got my birthday party instead of me because everyone hated me. I never saw a point in having another one, and now I'm at the age where I'll never have one again. Ghosted me. It was like 5 or 6 people too. I had to transfer to a different school, and all my friends just stopped talking to me. I kept texting them for another 6 months, telling them about something funny my dog did or a new movie that looked interesting. I asked if they wanted to meet up somewhere and gave them tips on an upcoming test if I was taking it before them. I never got a response. Not once. I have maybe 2 friends now, and I don't think I'll be making any more. There seems to be no point. I rarely make friends, and when I do, it's with the wrong people. Story 48. I told people I was pregnant when I was not so they would congratulate me. This happened shortly after my first living daughter passed away 2 months earlier in the neonatal intensive care unit. Story 49. My old best friend used to have me drive him about 2 hours to see a girl he swore was amazing and that he loved. He just wanted to be with her. His dad grew marijuana, and he would pay me back in marijuana, even though he knew I was trying to quit. At this point, he owed me well over $500 in gas money but never reimbursed me and would beg me to take him to her place, even if I said, I have work. One day, I called out 4 hours before a shift for this and got fired the following week because of him. I was upset and he didn't seem to care. Karma has a way of working, though, because now he has a child with her. They split up and are now co-parents at the age of 22. They separated because he cheated on her with 3 other girls, to my knowledge. If he wants to be a player and hang out with those troublemaking kids we grew up around, that's on him. I want a better life than that, and I haven't been his friend for over 3 years now. It was the best decision I ever made. Funny enough, he threw a fit over me not coming to his baby shower when I had a graduation to attend, and that's basically how our friendship ended. People change over the years. It's okay to let them and things go. Story 50. My best friend would try to chat up any female friends I had. Most wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. One ex, however, discussed things with him. There weren't any actual issues he could leverage, but she wasn't clear on what she meant when she said I didn't stop talking to her. He then proceeded to tell all my female friends that I was stalking my ex. This situation escalated one day when I received a call from one friend who asked me to pick her up as I was heading to Golden Gate Park and she was in Berkeley. The temperature difference over 10 miles could be as much as 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer. While driving through San Francisco, my ex called to discuss some random topics and also spoke to the friend I picked up. A third woman then called and asked when I last spoke to my ex. She wanted to know who called whom and what the conversation was about. I let my second friend answer. After that, she informed me about what was happening. I pulled over and spent 10 minutes calling my ex to connect her with all my other female friends. They gathered that evening, it was a Sunday, to discuss what had occurred and how to handle the situation. I didn't tell him for nearly 20 years. Story 51. She told me she checked out 3 carts of groceries while I was in the bathroom and doing some of my own shopping. I helped her push a cart out and then got arrested. Story 52. I heard a negative rumor about me. I confronted the person face to face early on. They had the audacity to deny it, but I know they were lying. I was shocked to learn how they viewed me, thinking I was getting close to our other friends. They even treated me coldly, despite my assurance that I wouldn't mind the negative rumor they spread. The most laughable part was that our friends initially believed them until I asked why they were avoiding me, which led to my discovery of that specific friend's betrayal. Story 53. My best friend of many years packed up and moved cross-country. The distance grew between us as the days, weeks, months, and years went by. Story 54. My friend went online and encouraged others to attack me on social media because I was dealing with depression. This friend is very popular in my former community, so people believed him. Suddenly, he claimed that my depression was fake and that I was desperate for attention. I ended up closing my social media accounts for years because I couldn't stand the negativity. When I confronted him, he acted as if he never did anything wrong. Story 55. Years ago, I had a group of friends, most of whom didn't really like one of the guys who hung around with us. While I could see their point, I defended him against these friends and made excuses for his behavior toward them from time to time. Now, I'm not saying I was a perfect friend by any means, but after defending this guy on numerous occasions, preventing fights between him and other group members, and generally turning a blind eye to who he really was, when he and I eventually fell out, all those friends sided with him. Despite trying to find a way back with my friends, it was obvious that this was impossible. I probably had a lucky escape, as the last I heard, some of them were sleeping with someone's partner behind his back. The ironic thing is that, at the same time this was happening, one of the guilty parties was criticizing the guy for not putting his hands in his pockets on a night out. I might be mistaken, but I would have thought that if you're going to sleep with one of your so-called friend's girlfriends, the least you can do is buy him a few drinks. Joking aside, that sense of betrayal and hypocrisy has always stayed with me. Story 56. Last weekend, while at a friend's house, he kept trying to show me his private parts. I told him to stop and that he was being disrespectful. Later that night, I awoke with his private parts on my face and him laughing. As I got up to teach him a lesson, he pulled down his pants, defecated on me, picked up a piece, and threw it at my face. He also got bodily fluids all over my phone, but he's telling everyone I did this when he actually did. I don't know what to do. Story 57. My friend and I had lunch every Wednesday. I told her that a young guy, 23, had been hitting on me. My husband died from COVID-19. We are members of the country club. The young guy and his dad played golf there. Before I told her, I asked her to promise never to mention it. They gossip a lot there. I told her not to tell her husband, and if she did, to ask him not to say anything. A couple of days later, I heard from the young guy. He said his dad approached him and told him to leave my husband's wife alone. After that, I never spoke to her again. Story 58. I have a dad, about 68 or 69 years old. He is paralyzed from the waist down, has cancer, and has pneumonia. I have had 2 friends make fun of him for this. The sad thing is that he is a veteran. My sister wants him dead for no reason. However, My sister is on probation for assaulting my mother repeatedly, which has resulted in bruises. Story 59. I kept my friend circle very small for as long as I can remember because I have issues with trusting others. That said, I cut a friend off because I was growing tired of hearing about their financial and health problems, but did nothing to help fix anything. Then I experienced a health issue due to burnout that led to being in the emergency room twice and almost needing a blood transfusion. They ignored me for days after that. Not long after, their partner reached out to me in our group chat asking for my help with something. I said I would help, but she never responded or thanked me. Felt like I wasn't even in the chat. For some reason, I felt hurt because I had a medical issue and received attention. However, I distanced myself anyway because I wasn't competing. I was working 50 hours a week with an erratic schedule, and I thought it was so cold and odd. Story 60. I went on a long tirade, saying very mean and hurtful things completely out of the blue and out of context. They basically told me not to bother them anymore unless it was about something important. 2.5 years and counting. Almost 20 years ago, another person started dating a girl I had been pursuing for months behind my back, and they knew it. She was very ambiguous as well, but they would have told me before I found out when I caught them making out drunk at a party. Their explanation was that she wasn't into me anyway, so they didn't steal her from me. What was I complaining about? She turned out to be a bit of a psycho back then, and they had a nasty breakup a few years later. To me, that was enough of a payback, and we have patched things up since. Story 61. I had a friend who would constantly pitch me apps, programs, and software. I would create graphics and user experience/user interface designs for free to get involved in his ideas. One day he called with an idea, but I was at a funeral and texted him to call me later. He went ahead and developed a mobile survey and quiz app, generating $80,000 a month from advertisements. He somehow lost my phone number during that time. Story 62. I had dinner with my friend on Saturday 2 weeks ago. The following Tuesday, her heart ruptured, and she died. She originally had a dissected aorta, which brought her to the emergency room. She was in the operating room when her heart ruptured. They saved her heart, but she was declared brain dead. Her parents pulled her from life support a week later. Story 63. I blame a friend of mine for causing me anxiety, which I still deal with today. My doctor is aware of this situation. I wish there was a cure for anxiety. Here is what happened. I had never encountered issues with friends before I met her. She was engaged in questionable behavior, which I will not disclose, and expected me to keep her secret. Honestly, I grew tired of her and informed her parents. Years later, since our parents still communicate, I did not attend her mother's funeral. Always remember in this life to be careful with whom you associate. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.